Sarah Fields, journalism or rage bait? How much damage can you cause with a biased narrative before "I'm just reporting the news" stops being an excuse? And if you're returning, hey, I see you. Now, let me make one thing Jason Crystal Lake clear. I'm nobody special. I'm just someone with a big mouth who isn't afraid to use it. And sometimes using said mouth is going to cause people to dislike me. It's going to piss some people off. And you know what? I can live with that. Because I'm not here to be everyone's favorite. I'm here to say what I think, stand on what I believe. And if I have to stand on that hill alone, then baby, I stand on it. Now, my platform is rather tiny right now. I see that. I see my little 1,000+ subscribers, but I also see past that number. Because I know that as long as I continue to speak on the things that genuinely move me, the things that make me question, the things that piss me off, and the things I believe need to be talked about, my tribe will find me. I don't need everyone. I'm not for everyone. I'm just here for a particular group of people. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Remember, this is a safe space. You're able to comment even if we disagree. All I ask is that you remain respectful, and I'm going to give you the same respect in return. And above all else, remember, Laesaidit. Let's go. It's Lay, not her, not him, not them, not they, just LAE. If you're here for the truth, you're in the right place. I'm going to say what I have to say, and we're going to go on about our day. Let's get into it. Who exactly is Sarah Fields? Sarah Fields is a Texas-based commentator who publicly describes herself as an independent investigative journalist, a political activist, an Army veteran, parent and child advocate, and the FOIA queen. Her public profile identifies her as a Republican precinct chair and previously as a Republican state delegate. And that distinction matters because I'm not going to sit here and pretend Sarah Fields is some politically neutral figure floating above American politics. She isn't. She is openly politically engaged. She's been involved with the Republican Party, and she describes herself as a constitutionalist. And in a June 2026 appearance on the Charlie Kirk Show, she was introduced as a mother, investigative journalist, a state delegate, and precinct chair. Another public biography describes her as a former U.S. Army military police officer who left the military in 2009, later earning a bachelor's degree in gerontology and a master's degree in health and wellness psychology. Now, none of that automatically disqualifies somebody from being a journalist. Let me say that again. Being conservative doesn't make somebody a bad journalist. Being Republican doesn't make someone a bad journalist. Being an activist doesn't automatically make someone a bad journalist. But if you're going to combine all of those roles, then people have every right to ask whether your political worldview influences the way you select, frame, and present stories. That's not an attack. That's basic scrutiny. And then there's the audience. Sarah's X account has grown into a major platform, And we're not talking about a small platform such as mine. We're talking about one that has hundreds of thousands of followers and tens of thousands of posts. That means we're not talking about some random person making a Facebook post that 12 cousins and 3 co-workers see. We're talking about someone with the ability to put a person's name, accusation, photograph, allegation, or interpretation in front of a massive audience, and that changes the responsibility. And when you have that kind of reach, being wrong is no longer harmless. And we have a documented example of Sarah Fields getting something seriously wrong. And that brings us to Peanut the Squirrel. In 2024, after the beloved social media famous squirrel was seized and euthanized by New York authorities, the internet wanted to know who complained. Sarah Fields publicly identified Longview, Texas resident Monica Keesler as a person responsible and encouraged her followers to make Keesler famous. The post spread, and according to reporting at the time, Keesler was subjected to vicious online harassment. Then came the problem. Little Sarah Fields later acknowledged that she had published false information and said she did not actually know whether Keesler was responsible for the complaint. Think about that. A person was publicly identified, an enormous audience was directed toward her, Miss Make Her Famous, and the internet did what the internet does. And then the information was acknowledged to be false. That should concern everyone. Not just Democrats, not just Republicans, everybody. Because imagine if someone did that to you. Imagine someone with hundreds of thousands of followers publicly naming you as responsible for something you did not do. Imagine thousands of strangers suddenly flooding your mentions. Imagine people threatening you. And imagine your name becoming synonymous with an accusation. And then imagine hearing, well, I wasn't sure. What? That's not a small typo. That's not misspelling someone's name. That's not getting a date wrong. That's an accusation against a real person. And sadly, because of said post, Miss Keesler, her address was circulated online. She received death threats. People threatened her business. And according to reporting, people sent random deliveries to her home late at night. Keesler told reporters she was worried about the safety of herself and her kids. And other women named Monica were also mistakenly targeted because people confused them with Keesler. One woman, Monica Keesler, publicly said she was receiving death threats despite having nothing to do with Peanut the Squirrel. Later reporting said Keesler and her attorney pursued public records to establish who actually made the complaint. New York officials ultimately had no record showing Keesler filed the complaint. Eventually, Sarah Fields admitted she didn't actually know whether it was Monica Keesler who was responsible. She didn't know. But calling herself an investigative journalist and posting something that nearly ruined this woman's life before you even sat down and said, I'm going to research. I'm going to make sure that I'm on my P's and Q's. I'm dotting all of my I's and I'm crossing all of my T's. She chose not to do that. And in her own explanation to Current Revolt that Sarah Fields gave, she said verbatim, she had relied on information she had been given and then investigated after publishing the accusation. Now, making a mistake like that might slide in elementary school, maybe even middle school. But when you are a grown woman established in your career, calling yourself an investigative journalist, that kind of mistake hits completely different, because that wasn't a typo. That wasn't getting someone's birthday wrong. That wasn't accidentally mispronouncing someone's name. That was putting a real woman's name, reputation, safety, and livelihood on the line. And for what? The consequences weren't theoretical. Monica Keesler faced harassment, threats, and fear for her family's safety because Sarah Fields, before even investigating, said, "Make her famous." To her hundreds of thousands of followers. And you know what they did like little sheep? They went and they immediately started attacking Monica off the word of Sarah Fields. And that's not even the saddest part. What's really sad is Sarah Fields' lack integrity. When we were kids, one thing we were all taught: if you make a mistake, you own it. If you say something that isn't true about someone, what are you supposed to do? You apologize. And you say, "I was wrong. I'm sorry." You take responsibility for the damage that your words caused. But it never came. It never came for Monica Keesler from Sarah Fields, because Sarah Fields lacks integrity. I personally expected a clear, unequivocal apology to Monica Keesler. Instead, what we got was an acknowledgement that the information was false and explanations about continuing to investigate. And one thing I hope that Sarah Fields can do moving forward is understand, before you unleash the internet on someone, you don't get to simply hit delete and erase the damage. And so that's why this video isn't necessarily just about Sarah Fields making a mistake. It's about what she did after the mistake. Because anyone can be wrong. Everyone makes mistakes. But your character is revealed by what you do after you realize you're wrong. And when a real woman has to live with the consequences of something you put into the world, the bare minimum is to look that woman in the face, or at least look your audience in the face and say, "I was wrong. I hurt someone, and I'm sorry." That's accountability, something Miss Sarah J. Fields refused to take. And that's integrity, something I see that she lacks completely. And this is where it gets interesting, because sometimes people will create a hostile situation, participate in the chaos, and then the second they realize the situation has actually become hostile, they want to switch gears and play victim. Now, all of a sudden, it's, "I'm being threatened. I'm in danger. Someone is after me," like Sarah Fields. What? Because let's not rewrite history. The situation didn't just magically appear out of thin air. You fueled the lies and the slander, and you helped create the environment that you started claiming to be afraid of. And that's one thing I will never, ever respect about anyone like Sarah Fields. Sarah Fields was gung-ho on her followers, making Monica Keesler famous. But the moment that hostile energy was redirected back towards her, it was, "Help! They're threatening me. They're picking on me. I'm a clear woman in distress. I don't know what's going on. Help!"
Exclusive, focusing on the fallout generated by the euthanization of a famous squirrel named Peanut. And how the court of public opinion viciously condemned an East Texas woman, blaming her for the controversy in upstate New York. Casey Koviak stepped away from the anchor desk this week to take a deeper look. And what she discovered has many in disbelief. Casey.
Yeah, that's right, Isaac. Monica Kiesler has been blamed by millions for filing a complaint with the state of New York that prompted the raid of Peanut's Freedom Farm, ultimately leading to the death of the famous squirrel. But I sat down with this mother from Longview who told me her life has been turned upside down by the onslaught of countless death threats, not only against herself, but her 10-year-old twin sons. She's speaking exclusively to KETK News for her first TV interview since Peanut's death. And not only is she innocent, we'll show you the public records that prove it.
New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation, DEC, raided his home and took the squirrel and this pet raccoon that he has.
It was the euthanization heard round the world. A beloved squirrel named Peanut and a raccoon named Fred, with millions of followers on social media whose lives were cut short by government officials in upstate New York.
It was the best thing that ever happened to us.
Their shocking deaths leaving fans across the globe both devastated and outraged, including Monica Kiesler and her twin 10-year-old boys in Longview, Texas.
I and my boys cried right along with the rest of the world when we found out that they were euthanized.
Kiesler and her sons felt a special camaraderie with Mark Longo and his rescue squirrel Peanut. They too were members of the squirrel rehabbing community. A rewarding experience Kiesler says she loves to share with her sons.
I mean, we treat them like the miracles that they are, you know, and release them back into the wild. And you know, it's a great source of joy for us.
Kiesler says she logged onto her Squirrel Rehab Facebook group to chat with other members about what had happened to the beloved squirrel. That's when Kiesler says she came across a screenshot someone had posted in the group of a woman harshly criticizing Mark Longo and his wife.
Just saying that they should have known better to have them because it was illegal in New York to do so, and that they had monetized them. And that was also wrong in her opinion. And basically that they should have seen all of this coming and they were completely at fault.
Kiesler says she's not a person who likes to see people kicked when they're down.
I had just seen a video of them crying and someone asked in the comments who everyone thought reported them. And I said, my guess is this woman that was in this screenshot. 1,000 times before, shared my opinion on social media, didn't think anything of it.
But just 5 minutes later, a post was shared with Kiesler that would quickly turn her world upside down.
She had screenshotted my Facebook page with my picture on it and where I lived, and it had 2 text boxes added to it, and they said that I was the one that reported them and that she had proof and that I had been bragging about it on my own Facebook page.
Within moments, Kiesler says an onslaught of threatening calls and texts started coming in so rapidly, she had a hard time grasping what had just happened.
I had heard of doxing before, but it's not real. It's sometimes not real in life if it doesn't happen to you and you don't, there's no way you can fully grasp how it feels or what it's even like until it happens to you. And so at first I panicked and shut everything down, and so that I could think logically about how to proceed.
Kiesler says she could feel the weight of her emotions pulling her to a new level.
One thing I've never really been is scared. I mean, up until this happening, because when you have children, it has a way of making you fearful of what's about to happen or what might be happening. Because when you have children, it has a way of, with their social media reach, it traveled very quickly.
Kiesler says soon the calls were coming in from overseas.
It was Japan. It's been Japan. It's been Germany. It's been England. Trying to think, South Africa, Australia.
But it was the threats made against her sons, like
they were going to come kill my children in front of me and drag them down my street by their intestines from their truck,
that Keesler says forced her to lean into her faith beyond understanding.
When someone makes those kind of threats towards your children and you know that you've been chosen to protect them and raise them, that's where all reason goes out the window.
And it was in that moment of surrender, Keesler says, she began to see the bigger picture.
It hit me very hard that the people that were messaging me were just, you've heard the saying, hurt people, hurt people, hurting people, hurt people. There are a lot of hurting people in our world.
Choosing not to add to the hurt, Keesler says she instead focused on the perfectly timed God-wink moments, showing her, in this battle, she wasn't alone.
I have an army of people that I know, and I have an army of people that I don't know personally that have reached out to let me know that they have my back. And it's been comforting in the midst of the darkness.
And that army happened to be the driving force leading Keesler to the information that would prove her innocence.
And I had tried to reach out myself to the DEC to try and find someone that would be willing to give me something official that would clear my name from as being one of the complainants or being accused of being one of the complainants.
Keesler says thanks to her network of fellow rehabbers, they were able to ultimately connect her to the lead counsel, whose name is also Monica, and provided the official government record Keesler needed to prove she had absolutely nothing to do with the fate of Peanut the squirrel. Reading in part, quote, after a diligent search of the files maintained by DEC, there are no records with your name nor any mention of involvement by you relating to the seizure of wildlife at Peanut's Freedom Farm on October 30th, 2024.
You have it, you've seen it. And it totally exonerates me. It's official. And I know I didn't. God knows I didn't. My kids know I didn't. My family and friends know I didn't. And that is ultimately what means the most to me.
Keesler says this experience has taught her the collective heart of humanity is wounded.
The language that people felt comfortable using with a stranger, they don't know that I donate my time to an organization called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, where I go photograph babies in hospitals that are not expected to make it, so their families have custom portraiture to remember them by, to remember holding them by. They don't know that I've raised baby animals. They don't know that I went through 7 rounds of in vitro and 4 losses of my own to have my boys. They don't know me. They don't know me. And they didn't take the time. They didn't ask.
To the people who watch this interview, what do you hope they take away from it?
I hope that they not only think before they speak to anyone, but think before they post on social media. Think that there's a human on the other end of that, and that there are other humans associated with that.
And that brings me to the question I want to leave you all with. How much does integrity actually matter when you're unwilling to apologize to someone you may have wronged? Because Sarah Fields has had plenty to say, but when it comes to acknowledging her own role, taking accountability, and apologizing to Monica Keesler, that seems to be where the conversation stops. So let me ask y'all, do you think Sarah Fields' refusal to apologize says more about Monica Keesler? Or does it reveal something about Sarah Fields' own character and integrity? Because sometimes the loudest thing a person can say is what they refuse to take accountability for. And you'll think Sarah Fields would have learned her lesson, but absolutely not. And baby, we're about to talk about another time little Sarah Fields cashed a check her ass couldn't cash. Because sometimes you can't keep writing checks with your mouth and then playing victim when those people turn around and now they're looking at you. The bank of Sarah Fields' lies, the bank of Sarah Fields' condescending statements, and the bank of Sarah Fields thinking she's a bully. It's time to cash in. And if you think the peanut situation was the only time Sarah Fields' role as a journalist became tangled up with the story she was covering, let's talk about Carmelo Anthony. Because this is where things get really interesting. Sarah Fields wasn't simply reporting on the Carmelo Anthony case. She eventually became a litigant in the fallout surrounding that coverage. Fields sued Carmelo Anthony's father, Drew Anthony, along with other people connected to the Anthony family, alleging defamation, harassment, invasion of privacy, conspiracy, and false reports to law enforcement and CPS. Those are Fields' allegations, and I'm making that distinction very clear because allegations are not the same as proven facts. And here's my question. When the journalist covering the story becomes part of the story, how objective can the coverage possibly remain? Because now, we're not talking about someone sitting outside the situation with a notebook saying, here's what happened. We're talking about a journalist who says she was personally targeted because of her reporting, who then became a plaintiff in litigation involving people connected to the very case she was covering. And again, I'm not saying the court ruled Sarah was lying. It didn't. In fact, the Texas court affirmed the denial of Drew Anthony's attempt to have her lawsuit dismissed under Texas anti-SLAPP law. So let's be intellectually honest. That ruling does not prove Sarah Fields' reporting was accurate, and it does not prove her allegations were true. It simply means the lawsuit survived that particular attempt to dismiss it. But it does raise a question that I think every audience member has the right to ask. Where does the journalist end and the activist begin? Because Sarah Fields is not simply reporting from a distance. She's politically active, she's publicly outspoken, she's deeply invested in the stories she covers. And in this particular case, she became personally involved in litigation arising from the controversy surrounding her reporting. So when she tells you, I'm just reporting the facts, I think it's fair to ask, are you? Or have you become so personally invested in the people, politics, and narrative surrounding these cases that you've crossed the line from journalist to participant? Because those are two very different roles. And here's the thing about investigative journalism. The journalist is supposed to investigate the story. The journalist isn't supposed to become the story. The journalist isn't supposed to decide who the villain is before the investigation is complete. And the journalist damn sure shouldn't expect the audience to blindly trust them simply because they put investigative journalists in their bio. So my question to Sarah Fields and her supporters: how does a journalist maintain the appearance of objectivity when she becomes personally entangled in litigation involving the family of the very person she's been reporting on? Because at some point, you're not just holding the microphone anymore. You inserted yourself in an already nasty, toxic situation. Oh, and let's not forget this little contradiction, because make it make sense, Sarah Fields. You seem to have a problem when people of color create GoFundMes, accept gifts, or ask their supporters for financial help. But when you needed financial assistance, you have no problem creating one for yourself. So I'm genuinely asking, what's the difference? Why is it acceptable when you do it, but you call others that do it grifters? Why are you deserving of compassion, financial support, and generosity from your audience, but people of color who ask their audience for the same support are somehow worthy of criticism? Is the GoFundMe the problem, or is it who created the GoFundMe? Because if your position is that nobody should be asking strangers for financial assistance, then stand on that. But if you're perfectly comfortable accepting that help when you need it, you don't get to shame someone else for doing the exact same thing. And if the difference you're seeing is the person's race, then we have a much bigger conversation to have, Sarah. And for those of you who are unaware of what a grifter is someone who makes money or gets benefits by deceiving, manipulating, or exploiting people. Basically, a scammer or a con artist, especially someone who makes a lifestyle out of convincing people to give them money, attention, favors, or other benefits. Now, for the life of me, I don't know how we went from talking about Carmelo Anthony to a 6-year-old little girl being assaulted. Can someone please connect those dots for me, because I'm not seeing the roadmap. And listen, I don't particularly care for Sarah Fields, but I'm not about to co-sign everything someone says simply because I don't like her. I can dislike someone and still recognize when someone else is dead wrong. Both things can exist at the same time. So, Drew Anthony, let's be completely honest. You said that a 6-year-old little girl could have defended herself from being assaulted by a grown man. I hate to be the one, the bearer of bad news, but there's absolutely nothing that little 6-year-old little girl could have did to that grown man to prevent him from assaulting her. Absolutely nothing. No amount of screaming, no amount of fighting. That was a grown man and that was a child. Their responsibility is not on her. And I think it's really disgusting that you brought that up. Have your argue with her mother all day, every day, but to speak about a 6-year-old little girl who was molested, that's disgusting, and it speaks volumes about your character.